We are working with Edenesque on an exciting project to try to localize the sourcing of some of the nuts and grains that go into Leslie's product, which she'll speak to today. But one particular project we're really excited about is growing out some oats. So at Wally Farms, we're going to grow 4 varieties of oats across 8 acres. So we're not too big in terms of scale with a lot of like mainstream industrial agriculture, but we're really going to focus on regeneration and bringing in some trial varieties of oats. We're going to work with some chefs in the community and also Leslie's team to determine what oats are best for cooking and what oats are best for milking. So we're super excited about that. I really want to just give a shout out to the Spark of Hudson, our sister organisation, for providing us with a platform to throw workshops and events for the community. So with that, I'll pass it over to the team. Super excited to get to know even more about Leslie through this workshop.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Thank you, Alyssa. If you want to scoot, or I'll scoot in.
Yeah.
If you guys would scoot in as well, we can. Sorry.
Get cozy here. We get all cozy.
Yeah. So Leslie, if you kind of want to give us an introduction on the business that you've created and the business that we all know and love, Edenesque.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to present our story. I didn't know if my story is particularly interesting, but here we go. And as a result of this, I started to think about the journey from dream to, I guess, present day, dream to business to where it's actually been actualized, if you will. And I noticed that the dream started even way back, even before prior to the 8 years where I've started Edenesque, which was 8 years ago. And I'm not going to do the Golden Girl Sophia, think of it 1942 Sicily, or in my case, 1977 Detroit, but that's where I was born. And I grew up in the church, and I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and she was extremely influential. And as a result of that, I was just exposed to members of our community, just the nutrient deficient diseases that were prevalent. My grandmother, she was extremely generous. And one of the things that she did is that when, one of the sisters of the church would fall ill, we would go to the hospital, she would record the Sunday sermon and bring them the Sunday bulletin, and we would go visit people in hospital, probably on Saturdays or Sundays, or just throughout the week. And so as a result, I think I began to get curious, even though I was very young. But what she also taught me was the way in which community is very important, and how we need to be connected, and we don't want people shouldn't be forgotten about in our community, which leads me to our mission. But the next thing was my mother, how she was extremely disciplined. And then I started to think about how I was extremely stubborn. And she would tell me to do something, I would do it anyway. Like the time I drove my sister's bicycle in the street, I think I was like 9, and she had a 10-speed and drove in the street, and I was fine. I came back, and then I got hit by a car, and I was like, oh my God, but I got back on the bicycle. And so as I started to think about a few of those stories and thoughts, I noticed how all of those were very important in my development and needed for the building and the creation of Edenesque. We are very interested in working with the community. We do have an open hiring policy to where those who are just as impacted or in some way who are differently abled, we hire and try to give an opportunity and lift people up as much as we can. The dream is to, as we get bigger, we can have a greater impact within our community, working with local farmers, but also providing a product that is clean and nutritious. You know, our milks are, you know, basically just nuts in the reverse osmosis water. And if we use a sweetener, it's mainly from a farm from the Hudson Valley, et cetera. So ingredients are important and has been throughout my culinary career, but mainly to say, hey, we can be nutritious, but we can also be delicious, and giving a food and a product that's very supportive to the end user as well as the community. So I just believe that there should be more products out there that are alive and full of nutrition.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Did I go on?
can you elaborate a little bit more, tell us more about your culinary background, I guess, in terms of like your mission to source well and to have something nutritional and delicious. Like, tell us about your background in the culinary world and how that's influenced your product.
Well, I've just always, and I go back to childhood, and think one of my favorite things was going to the fruit market with my grandmother and just going to the grocery store. I mean, I still love going to the grocery store. And as a result, I did see, again, our products were plagued with additives and preservatives. So that was very interesting for me. However, I guess my love for cooking and for food and for freshness, it was just always a part of me. Maybe perhaps my grandmother introduced me to that when we used to go to the fruit market every weekend. However, I always just wanted to eat well, and I just had a sense that clean foods were better and just sourcing locally. And so when I started my culinary journey, I was working at the Orlando Convention and Visitors Bureau, as a matter of fact, and I always knew that I wanted to be a chef. But what I did is I got a job at Roy Restaurant in Orlando, Florida, and it was Chef Roy Yamaguchi, and I would work there on Saturdays for free. I said, don't pay me. I just want to see that if I like this job. And so because of that and the high-end restaurant that it was, I started being more aware about the finer ingredients, of course, started being introduced to things. And then from there, I went to Le Cordon Bleu. And again, it's just always been my sense that we just need to have nutritious foods, and they can be delicious and et cetera. And came up here to New York to work at Restaurant Danielle under Danielle Boulud. So that's the journey. And I think when you have fine dining, sourcing is extremely important. And so I became even hyper aware about where our food was. And that's just always stayed with me as I moved along and worked with individuals on their health.
And then what led you to decide on a milk product, a non-dairy milk product?
I have no idea.
Were you juicing before? Like,
You know, I'm gonna say that.
And juices, and like that's maybe how it led you.
Well,
sort of.
Well, I have an idea, but I mean, not like, because I was working at, I was the chef at Columbia University at the President's House for 6 years. And I just got to a point where I knew it was time to make a transition. And at the time, Laura, you're correct, is that cold pressed juices were very popular at the time. And so I went out and got a fancy cold pressed juicer. And then I sourced, and I said, I'm going to be different. I'm going to make, source from only local farmers, and I'm going to customize it to meet individual needs. So I did have a lot of clients at the time to where whatever their health concerns were, I would develop a juice cleanse that was customized from them, just for them. And at the end, I would always have a nut milk as a part, just to ground them during that time of fasting.
At the final of the cleanse, you're reintroduced to something a little bit more hearty through the.
At the end of the day.
Okay.
So before they went to sleep, just
Gotcha.
for something that was more soothing, and warm it up or whatever. And so I guess what happened was when I first started selling out in Long Island City, Queens, at the Long Island City Flea, was my first sell. And they said, well, you can't bring your juices, you can only bring your nut milks. And I said, oh, okay. And I started receiving feedback the more I interacted with the consumer. And then when I went to sell more into farmers markets, I noticed that I just didn't like cold pressed juicing. And I really began to like creating a variety of nut milks. And so that's kind of how it organically evolved.
And where did the name come from?
I just created it because I wanted something that was like the Garden of Eden. So esque means like, and that's how it was, just going back to clean eating, back to wholesome eating, and back to
Right.
where it was just strictly from the garden, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then how was it starting a business from the ground up, and what made you choose Kingston as a manufacturing?
Well, I originally started off in Queens, and it was a very difficult feat. Producing nut milks is quite challenging. And oftentimes I said, perhaps I should have just had a cookie or something, because where to make it was quite challenging. Just trying to find the space. So we start off in Queens at a shared incubator space. And then I had to leave that space because the product is sensitive. There were so many other types of businesses. When the health department came, they said, well, someone upstairs has truffle oil, someone else had something on. I said, oh my God. So I did go through a period where I was looking for a place to produce. I mean, and there was a time I found a space that was in the back of a pizzeria that my friends owned a pizzeria, and they said, well, you can use it back here because we don't use it. And it was in the White Plains Mall. And so I would get there and I had my area and my space, and I, set up all my equipment, had the refrigerator. And sometimes I would get there at 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning and make all my milk and then go straight to the markets, or whatever. It was just crazy. And so there was an initiative that was in Newburgh, and I wanted to relocate to Newburgh initially. And they said, well, we don't have any artisanal food manufacturing in Newburgh. And we were looking and looking and looking, and eventually something came out with the ARC, or the ARC. They were and it worked. It was perfect because it was alignment with my values. They, working, can you hire some of our clients? Absolutely. And so, that space came available, and it took about a year to get it set up and to, do the renovations and construction and et cetera. And at that time I said to myself, what do I want to be? Do I want to continue to be a garage business, or do I really want to scale up? And that meant pasteurization or doing something where I could sell retail. And so then I took the year and made the transition, and it had just happened to be in Kingston. So it was just an organic fit.
And you've just moved again.
And moved again. I know, Nancy, you remind me. It's been 12 days, I think, 10 or 12 days. And we're in the middle of renovation, and it's a transition. And I think back at the times during the pizzeria, making the milk, and I look now and it's like, oh my God, this is really happening.
Yeah.
And I just feel elated that it is happening, that we are able to, now we have room to expand and to scale in a real way. Correct.
Yeah. How big is your space now, and how different is it from your previous spaces?
Before we were coddled, I would say, the previous space, I would say our manufacturing space was somewhere around 600, 675, something like that. So now we have almost 3,000 square feet. So it's a huge difference. But, for about a good 8 months, we were busting at the seams. We didn't have any storage. We didn't have, the refrigerator would get too full, and we had to, and then it wouldn't get cold enough. We had to limit what we could do. And so it would start to get extremely tight there. So I feel fortunate that, again, we've expanded and we have the room to expand and scale, that I believe that we're gonna do.
So we
Yeah,
have
so-
almond,
That's right.
pistachio,
Right.
oat,
And
and cashew, and those are the 4 flavors.
those are the 4 main ingredients, but
Yeah.
of course, each one has
Has different flavors.
different.
Which one
flavoring.
is the hardest to make?
Oat?
And
Yeah,
why
oh,
is
that's,
that?
well, because it's sometimes initially it would get slimy, as you know, because then I forgot, oh no, wait a minute, it's a grain. I have to remember
Yeah.
you
When it
can't
gets
work
super
it.
hydrated,
Yeah, you
it
can't,
gets that slimy texture.
you can't work it that way. And then it's
Right.
like, it's too much oat and it's not enough. And so it's just really been a battle. And then you would have to, the thing about it is that because of our foods are heavily filled with preservatives and additives and cane sugar and all these things, when you present the almond milk, that some of them have 2% almonds, and you present this almond milk, it tastes different
Mhm.
to the completely
Completely.
different thing.
Yeah.
And so it's same with the oat milk. And so it's like, wait a minute, oh, I mean, those oat milk out there, they're pretty good, but they're filled with a bunch of stuff. So when you
Mhm.
present something that's just oats,
Yeah.
whatever, and it's like, no, this is what it's supposed to taste like, or they,
Mhm.
where there's a lot of carbs, it's like, well, because it's a carb.
Because it's a real
It's
ingredient.
it's a
Yeah,
real
people have
ingredient.
forgotten what the actual taste of a pure ingredient
That is correct. And
Mhm.
so I, maybe spent a little bit too much time trying to come up to that expectation, or that arbitrary expectation of what an oat milk is, or maybe trying to mimic.
Mhm.
And you can't do that. But so I would
Mhm.
say I've had the most challenges.
And is that
With
the
our
one
oat
that
milk.
froths the best? Which one froths the best, if you
They
like to do
all-
that? They do.
They all do, actually, and
Okay.
our oat milk is wonderful. I know that a few of the coffee shops are using our milks, the almond milk, especially for their cappuccinos and whatever they use them for, but they all do that. And this one for coffee especially does that, our oat milk for coffee. So
Yeah.
you can use them for all of that stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Which of the milks would you say sells the most? Like, which one do you sell out of at the farmers markets? And what's the difference between that clientele versus like a coffee shop or like a grocery store or things like that?
The farmers market is, I guess they would be the same, because our markets probably are in more alignment to, a philosophy of the farmers market. So there is some overlap, and if they can't get it at the farmers market now, they know they can go to Mother Earth or somewhere to get that. I would say that our almond milk sells the most, and actually the oat. But almond milk still first,
Mhm.
and the
Yeah.
oat, and I think the cashew is catching on.
Mhm.
But it is a,
Yeah,
more robust flavor because it is cashews.
sure.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's pretty typical. That's probably what I would have expected, because I think just in general, those are like the more approachable type of milks, just because it's more of what people are used to. But I mean, this pistachio milk that you've brought today is so interesting and great in flavor. I wonder, like, how has that been selling? I know it's a new product for you, and I'm just curious to know.
It's brand new. We just
Yeah.
got the label last week.
Okay.
We were testing it out at the farmer's market, the sweetened variety, and
Mhm.
people really like that because it's
Yeah.
interesting. New business partner, Ravi, created the pistachio milk. And it has a bit of cardamom in there, and so it's quite lovely. And so, yeah, so that's coming out. It's not really out
Okay.
to the stores yet,
Fun.
but it will be out.
And are
there.
you working with any chefs to create recipes or chefs to use your products?
Well, I have knows, well, I am a chef, so I
Right.
know I create a bunch of stuff at home. Curries and soups and bisque, and I bake with the oat milk, which is perfect for that, and waffles and custards, etc., and ice creams, and so many things that you can do. But what
Yeah.
I am noticing is that a lot of bakers are using our oat milk to make their frosting and to bake with. And so that is an area that we are starting to enter into, and to go back to your question, the difference between the retail and the food service, because now you guys are using it like you would use it more like a utility. So, you can't use it for baking or use it to make your, your popsicles with. I know a couple of companies have done that. So we're starting to get more
That's
of
interesting.
that. Yes.
And is there anything on coming out after this, or you're going to stop with these four?
No, my hope is that, again, that we become hyper local. So I'm really interested in working with some of our New York Hudson Valley based tree nut farmers. So when their trees are ready, it's my hope that we could come out with a hazelnut or chestnut and experiment a little bit with that. That may be next year. We are going to do some additional brand extensions. And we could talk about that a little bit later, especially once we get a little bit more settled in our new space and adapt a little bit. And then we'll have some bandwidth to be able to introduce some new stuff. So my hope is the third quarter of this year, maybe coming out with something else new, but definitely for 2023.
That's exciting.
And do you think you'll just pretty much stay in the Northeast New York area, or are you thinking maybe beyond?
We absolutely, yes, beyond to where we can, where it doesn't disturb the integrity of our product. So right now, it's my hope that we are, or my ambition that we become, a regional business, a Northeast region of that corridor, if you will, from Philadelphia up to Maine. Right now, we're starting to sort of peek around a bit. We're at the we're climbing more north outside of the Hudson Valley. Now we're in Brattleboro, Vermont, in the store there, and in several stores in Connecticut. And starting to look into the Berkshires, and first finding those stores that are in alignment to where we're not too far to where we can't nurture the stores and the customers there to gain more traction, but slowly and strategically begin to broaden our horizons a bit.
And is there a difference in the shelf life, or are they all the same?
They're about all the same. Yeah, we just had a shelf life study done through Cornell University. So our shelf life is about 3 weeks. It's 3 weeks. So which is great as far as our integrity. It does sort of hurt us when a lot of the nut milks out there have a shelf life of like 6 months or a year, and it's like, well,
right,
we want to have a shelf life. We kind of want it's a good thing to have a shelf life. That means the food is alive and vibrant, and that's why they froth without having a bunch of additives and things in there. So yeah,
totally. Can you talk a little bit more about any farms or people that you're sourcing from now? I know that the honey is one of them, and I think we mentioned the maple being another, but if you could let us know those, I think that'd be a great point to talk on.
Sure. We work with Bee Hollow Farms for the honey, and Tree Juice for our maple. And it is our desire to work with Sweet Freedom Farms, so I'll be reaching out to them actually next week. So we're low on maple, and I want to start sourcing from them because, again, it is very important to us to create community and to work with companies that are in alignment with our mission and what we stand to do. And I know they have such a wonderful mission, doing such great work, that it would be wonderful to continue to partner, or to begin to partner with them. Just like with Wally Farms. So
maybe this is a good time to talk about the horchata conversation that I know that you're having with Alyssa. I don't know if you'd like to elaborate more on that, if you feel comfortable talking about it.
A little bit. Well, that's in the works. I did go down to the Bronx a couple of weeks ago and made horchata with the folks at La Mirada, and it looks like we're going to be partnering using our oat milk and her recipe to come up with a wonderful new plant-based horchata product, which is going to be delicious. We're going to use the almond milk for that.
Okay,
So we're going to start that. We're starting now, actually. So we're starting to create that. So that should be fun.
And is anyone
Absolutely.
using them to make cocktails?
Not yet, that's interesting. Some of my customers have done different fun things, especially we have a cashew milk that's carob, date, and maple, and they've made all sorts of wonderful cocktails, like mudslides and whatever else that's out there. But yeah, and I may be in conversation with another company, and he may want to make something in a can using our milk. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but there's just a limitless possibilities
Oh, yeah.
about what we can do with the product. But yeah.
So do you have any free time? What do you like to do for fun?
No, I don't have any free time. But no, I think what I like to do for fun, what I'm able to do is, every once in a while I go to the Caramore and listen to some classical music, especially when I live down in Westchester, or to the opera or something like that, or hang out with some friends. But I haven't really traveled much. So we did a cross-country trip, but Pepper, as you guys know, my dog, takes up a lot of time. And so we spend a lot of time hiking and out in nature. So that's about what we have the bandwidth for. And then I have to work out. So it was one of the things I did learn during this time, is that you balance as much as you can. It'll never be this full-on balance right now, especially as I'm in the middle of building a company. But I can do some things that are essential for myself. And so that's going to the gym and eating well, and, hiking with the dog. It's, helpful for both of us. So those little things that you can do, I find.
And that's what you
sort
would
of balance it
advise,
out.
maybe that's the kind of advice you would give somebody who's starting something, is to still keep something for yourself.
And get some rest. So when I go home, I don't usually do a lot of work. I mean, I may get up at 4:30, 4:45, but I usually go to bed pretty early, and just carve out time where I can, I need this to be sane and I need this to be healthy. And I think that's the thing about it is that I've learned that although I've given so much to this company and the creation of it, I have at times lost myself. And so I think that it's very important to know, for me, is to remember that I matter and that I am important too. And there's a lot of things I want to do, but if I'm not whole and healthy or feeling good or nourished, then neither will the product or the employees or the community or anything that I'm trying to do. That won't translate.
Yeah. We have a listener asking, which coffee shops do you carry your milks in?
Right now, they're in Norwalk, and that is a new effort. So if you know of a coffee shop that we should be in, let us know.
Okay.
But we are starting to come out now that we have the new labels, and again, some bandwidth because we finished the moves. And I currently moved up here to be closer to the business. And to be full-time with it, et cetera. So now that we have some bandwidth, or we will, then you'll start seeing us at some of the coffee stores, and then
People can go in and ask for it. Do you have Edenesque?
Can you make that
Can
with
you-
Edenesque? No, that's what I want my cappuccino made with
That's the
this.
new standard.
That's the new standard.
Yeah, it should be.
That's correct. So
Yeah, but in town, I know our listeners can get it in Hudson at the Rolling Grocer. But I think it would be great to see some coffee shops in the area also having your product, because it's delicious and should be everywhere.
well, thank you.
Yeah.
We're getting there. We're starting to make some headway. So
Great. So is there anything we missed as far as something you might like to add? Or do you think we covered what?
oh gosh, well, there's so much. I don't even know myself.
Yeah.
I mean, just because it's just been such a incredible journey, that which I am extremely grateful for. But.
Did you have to come up with any machine specializing for making your milk, or are there machines that can use the nuts and grind them up, or did you have to?
That's a great question. I tested out in so many different equipment and I guess as we started to talk more, I started to have all these flashbacks and these memories, and I was having this memory about when I was making the milk, and I remember going to this one woman-owned business close to my house at the time in Westchester, and she had the big equipment and all that stuff, and I tried the milk on this type of equipment and the floor grinders and the big presses and all this stuff. And I found that it became a bit flat. That some of the extremely large commercial equipment, some of the nuance of the product is lost, what makes the product a little special.
Mhm.
We talked about frothing or steaming, or just the aliveness, or when you look at the bottom of this, we use vanilla being that extract that you can see that. And it's those little details that I wanted to preserve. And so I tend to not do the super large industrial equipment just for that reason. So we blend it. It would be the closest thing. I've tried to preserve the method, the home style method, as much as possible. Just so when someone picks it up, they say, okay, we're starting off with nuts, we're grinding them, this is a fresh, this is, you just know, you can, that's that product, so full of integrity. So I just kept it as close to that home style as we could possibly be, but still having an ability to scale and maintain the nuance of the product, which is extremely important.
Yeah, and the consistency too, right? That's was probably challenging at the beginning. Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of, it is, but not so much. There are, standards that are enforced and protocols within the production area.
Yeah. You mentioned being in farmers markets. I'm curious if you could let our listeners know which one you're at, and potentially like if you would go to another one, or do you feel like that's not necessary?
We are at farmers markets, yes, and we're at it going on a different strategy. We're in several. We're at Westport, Connecticut, Pleasantville, Kingston, and Schenectady, actually, or Albany area. And we are probably going to do some Hastings and Irvington, etc. The botanical gardens, etc. But our strategy now is that we've learned that we have to pivot a bit and use the farmers markets as more of an introduction, as a marketing tool, instead of the main businesses. We just won't have the capacity to do all of these farmers markets and the stores and the food service and all this, stuff like that. But we are trying to, I may, reach out to Hillsdale and just do pop-ups once a month. I think that's
so people get familiar with the
and
product.
they can taste the product. Once you taste the product, I think you'll know that it's a bit different than what you're used to.
Yeah. Another listener is commending you. They said very good point about taking care of yourself, your body, your mind as an entrepreneur. And I would have to agree with them and just commend you on the acknowledgement of yourself, your mind, your body, and putting that first. Because like you said, you can't have a good product or a business or just vibe in general if you're not taking care of yourself.
Well, and that's true. And I'll also add, for me, it was important to have a spiritual practice, because there's been so many times to where, your back's up against the wall And should I quit? Is it worth it anymore? And so, or you see things around you as they are, and you have to have the ability to have some vision to see beyond this. Now we're, there's boxes, they're back there in storage, and he's trying to figure storage room so we can move the boxes and organize that. And then now he's going to drill the floor and all these renovations going on. And it's like, oh my God, this is
A lot of stressors coming at
there
you all at
can be a lot of
once.
stressors coming in, especially now with so much transition.
Mhm.
And so I find that it's important just to go inside, to breathe, take a moment and say, okay, I'm on the right path. I have my thing. But yeah, I think all of that is important because there are a lot of disappointments. There are ups and downs. And I believe for me, being an entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart. You have to be determined and have just a belief that this is what I'm destined to do. And I think when I started to think about the journey, and I started to think about how all of these events in my life added up to this current place that I'm in now, it's like, in some ways, it has me feeling like I've been destined to do this, like, okay, when I got hit by the car on this 10 speed, I wasn't scared. It's like I took a risk and I got back on the 10 speed. I mean, once my face healed up, that's pretty bad. But, I got back up. And so those are some of the values that I've used, or some of those experiences. And, that discipline that my mom, instilled in me, or the generosity or the connecting to the community that my grandmother instilled in me. Those were vital to me existing and creating something today. So I feel that that it's just a part of it, and I have to keep that in mind.
Yeah. In the 8 years that Edenesque has been alive, what do you think is the biggest change? Like from year 1 to year 8, like what do you think now that you feel like you've perfected? Or maybe on the opposite side of that, like what have you learned the most, or what's the biggest change from year 1 to year 8?
I think me, and the more I evolved and grew as a person on this journey, so did my products. So the awareness, that evolution or transformation that was happening inside of me because of this experience, it's manifested through the product and who I'm now attracting, or where it is now. And I think that once you get, it just happens organically. And so as you begin to evolve, you will. But one of the things that I did is I was so determined. I said to myself at the top of COVID, so we had to take some time, about a couple of months off because of COVID. We'd just gotten into our first store in November of 2019 in Mother Earth, Kingston. They've been such great supporters for so long. And then we had to stop productions. I didn't know first at the ARC and,
Sure.
Compromised immune system. We have to close down. I was scared, but I was still working too full time. One of the things I said, well, I'm going to take this period and I'm going to say, what is it in me that I need to work on in order to make sure that I'm not getting in the way of the success of this business that I believe is going to serve our community. So I worked with a shaman for years, like every week, like 2 or 3 hours a week, just to kind of sort out any sort of stuff that I had going on here that was going to limit me and my abilities. And so after that work, that did translate, that does manifest. And so I can say, okay, any limiting beliefs, what's going on inside of here? And so taking the time to work on yourself. So the more you grow and transform, I think that for me, it's been just reflective. The more you expand, yeah.
Well, you're an inspiration, and we love all of the milks for sure. So we hope that.
Yeah, which one's your favorite?
Oh, I'm basic. The unsweetened almond. pure almond. However, I take that back. 'Cause
Oh,
I know, now because I go through about 2 or 3 bottles a week. I know I'm probably eating up the profit, but but I also cook with the cashew because I'm a chef, you know, I make stews and curries and desserts and ice creams and custards, and
yeah.
I do so much with the pure cashew that I just really like it because again, we were talking about if you don't want to use coconut milk, or is a good substitute for coconut milk. And then the oat milk, I'm starting to bake with it when I bake, which is,
What are you baking with it?
well, I had a craving for corned beef and cornbread one day. So I made some cornbread and I slice it and take and freeze it and then kind of nibble on it whenever I want a piece of cornbread. So it was absolutely delicious. So I was like, oh, this works. And sometimes I'll make a pancake.
Yeah,
Yeah, so and I'll use the oat milk to make the pancakes with.
great. Well, I think we're ready to wrap up if
Oh,
you're
yeah.
if you're feeling like we're in a good space, or if you have anything else you'd
I
like to
think
share.
so. No, if you guys have any questions, or you could, yeah.
I really appreciate you coming,
Well,
talking with us.
I just appreciate you guys having me, and I tell you, it's really wonderful to have the support of Wally Farms and Spark and the community there, and
We have a lot to look forward to and
Yeah,
we
in our
certainly
work
do.
together.
Well, I'm super excited about the oats. I think I've told so many people about it already, and there is a store that is waiting. They're so cognizant about the way in which their stores, they're waiting until we harvest the oat milk to carry my product.
So strict on sourcing.
Extremely strict. So I admire her for that though, but.
Sure, yeah.
But still.
I think more and more people are becoming more conscious of where things are coming from and how they're processed and made, even more, especially since COVID. I think people are really paying attention to the health of their body and what they put in.
Yeah, I think so too. Absolutely. And more people are reading labels, and it's such a demand. It's such a demand that I just see even Price Chopper change his logo and everything just to have this natural, real feel. I said, what market is that? It's like, that's Price Chopper. It's like, wow. So yeah, it is. People are really becoming more rare, and manufacturers are as well. So I think this is a great timing for our product, and some space will be made for us.
Yeah,
Totally.
Absolutely, in the marketplace.
Yeah, all those in Hudson, you know where to find.
Yeah.
the
Ask
milk.
for it by name.
And you can ask all of the people in the markets around here and just let them know, put it on their radar that you'd like to see the product there, and
That's right.
let them do the research and get it in.
And buy it.
And
when
buy
it's
it.
there.
Thank you so much, Leslie.
Well, thank
It's
you.
a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. We'll
Thank
be
you.
seeing you and working with you as well.